you want a healthier garden? Of course you do, but how can we achieve it?
By proper composting.
Compost is good for your soil and the bacteria in your soil. It keeps your plants healthier and your soil healthier. Hi, I'm Ayan Boyd.
And I'm Jen Craig, and we're going to talk to you about backyard composting. Specifically, we're going to take you through the following topics. What is compost, and what is composting, and how does it work? Why would you want to compost? What is essential for quality compost? What materials will you need to do your own composting? What are some common composting methods? What do you do to set up your composting pile? What to consider before you set up your compost pile? How do you build and maintain a compost pile? What are solutions to common challenges? What if you can't make your own compost? And how to use your compost in your own garden.
Composting is nature's way of recycling. For many people, composting is just turning waste products from the kitchen and your garden into valuable resources.
Compost is rich in nutrients. It can be used in gardens and landscapes. Because compost is made up of plant material, it generally has all the elements it needs for growth.
Everything that grows is made up of nutrients, and these nutrients are carbon and nitrogen, and together these elements are the carbon and nitrogen ratio.
This ratio is key in determining how microbes decompose material.
Carbon is often referred to as browns, nitrogen as greens. Generally speaking, the browns are dried out stems, stalks, and leaves of plants. For example, straw, hay, wood shavings, sawdust, and backyard autumn leaves.
The greens include just about any fresh or slightly wilted plant matter, such as grass clippings, kitchen scraps, such as veggies, coffee grounds, and eggshells, and even seaweed.
In nature, you don't have that perfect 3-to-1 ratio, carbon and nitrogen. So that's why when composting, you have to mix it up and experiment with different materials to try and get close to that 3-to-1 ratio.
Most organic materials decompose, but not everything belongs in the compost pile because they may pose a health hazard or create a nuisance. Some things you should not add to your compost pile include diseased plants, weeds gone to seed, some kinds of manure since they may transmit diseases, coal ash, which can be toxic to plants, meat, bones, grease, whole eggs, and dairy products may attract rodents.
Although composting can be simple and easy, there's a few tools that you're going to need when composting. Tools such as a compost thermometer make it easier to take the temperature of your pile to monitor if it is behaving correctly or not. A pitchfork works best for turning and altering the pile. A watering can/hose to add water to your pile as you build it to gauge the moisture content of the composing materials. The material should feel damp to touch when the material is tightly squeezed in hand. Optional tools such as a shredder or a lawnmower help to decrease the size of the material going into your pile. One method of composting is using compost bins. It's not necessary, but it makes the process a lot easier and more fun to use.
The bin that is right for you depends on the amount of space in your yard, how much material you want to compost, how fast you want finished compost, and your personal style and taste. Composting requires a bin at least 3 by 3 by 3 feet so that it can hold in heat. A smaller bin won't be able to hold heat hot enough. A bin larger than 4 feet on one side will need ventilation in the center to admit air to its center.
Most bins are square or rectangle, some even round. They can be made of wood, wire, plastic, straw bales, or metal. Plastic bins are good for small kitchen compost piles. For wooden compost bins, white cedar is used because it is naturally rot resistant and lasts for years. From a sustainable approach, you can join 4 pallets to make a bin. If you are looking to make a compost bin very inexpensively, you can use old straw bales.
A holding unit is the most basic and easiest way to compost and is typically done in urban settings. It only requires placing waste in the bin as necessary, where decomposition takes typically 6 months to 2 years. Because yard and garden waste will be added continuously, the stages of decomposition will vary from top to bottom, where the most decomposed material is found near the bottom and the newer material at the top.
Turning units are a series of bins used to turn active compost piles. Each turning unit allows the waste to be conveniently mixed for aeration on a regular basis. Having these bins in a row of 3 makes a nice compost assembly line where compost can be turned from one bin to the following bin. The mixing provides bacteria and the oxygen they need to break down the materials in 4 to 6 weeks.
Composting piles can be considered either hot or cold. Heat is the natural byproduct that microbes produce as they go through the process. Hot composting piles happen very quickly and work best if you add materials all at once. Cold piles take a little bit longer. They take the slow and steady approach. You can add things to them and then let them do their thing.
The question on where to put your compost pile really depends on how you plan on using it. Cold piles should be placed near your kitchen or in your garden. Hot piles should be placed anywhere that's convenient to you. You want to keep your piles away from damaging dry winds and put it in partial sun so that it gets heated up a little bit. Permanent compost piles should be placed fairly close to your garden. You can include a compost pile as part of your crop rotation and put it in different locations each year. Any compost left behind will enrich your garden.
Before starting the composting process, there are 5 things to remember and learn. Nutrient balance, you want to control the rate of decomposition. Particle size, the act of grinding, chipping, and shredding materials increases the surface area which microbes can feed. Moisture content, the microbes need sufficient amount of moisture to survive. Water is the key mechanism that helps transport materials through the pile and make nutrients accessible to microbes. A moisture content of 40 to 60% provides adequate water without limiting aeration. Oxygen flow, turning the pile helps to aerate the pile. However, care must be taken not to provide too much oxygen, which can dry it out and impede the process. And temperature. Microbes require a certain temperature range for optimal activity. Microbes can actively raise the temperature of the pile to as high as 140 F.
When creating a compost pile, the key is mixing the ingredients together, just like lasagna. That will kick off the decomposition process and ensure a proper mixing.
For the purposes of this demonstration, a compost pile will not be considered to scale. When building a compost pile, start with a coarse layer of carbon material on the bottom so that you can ensure proper aeration through the pile. Next, add a layer of nitrogen material, such as grass clippings. Ensure that this material is damp when adding to the pile. On top of this, add another layer of carbon material. Ensure that this material is also damp. On top of this, add organic matter. This will introduce microbes and kickstart the process of decomposition. Mix the layers together before adding another layer. Continue the process until the bin is full. The pile will settle and it needs to be about 3 feet to heat up properly. After built, cover the pile to prevent evaporation from coming off the top.
For cold compost pile, nothing needs to be done. But for a hot compost pile, you need to keep turning it and keep adding water. You also need to check the temperature regularly. The peak temperature should be 90 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. This usually happens 4 to 7 days after the pile is made up. Then you need to turn it a second time, and that normally happens 4 to 7 days after that. With each turning, the pile should be watered and the material moved from the outside to the center. The compost will be finished when the pile cools off and decreased to about 1/3 of the original volume.
When troubleshooting symptoms, consider these easy tips to help solve your problems.
Unpleasant odor and ammonia, that is because too much nitrogen.
Try adding more carbon material and aerate the compost pile.
Pile is too wet and an unpleasant odor, that is because too much moisture.
Try adding more brown material and aerate the compost pile.
Pile doesn't look like it is doing anything, that is because of temperature.
Try adding more greens to speed up the decomposition process.
Pile is cool, need turning.
Try bringing material from the outside and turn it into the center. Compost is critical to a healthy garden. If you can't make your own, consider buying some.
Buy compost with caution. There are no universally accepted standards for judging the quality of compost, nor certification organizations to monitor compost production.
When purchasing, here are some questions to ask.
What does it look like? You should not be able to identify any plants or plant parts. You shouldn't be able to see any twigs or bark. Good compost will have a dark color and will be loose and uniformly textured. What does it smell like? The odor of finished compost should smell earthy. It should not be offensive in any way, or musty, stale, or rotten, or smell like manure.
When using compost in your garden, ensure that it has completely finished the decomposition process. Finished compost should be free of visible debris. You should not add partially decomposed material to your garden because it'll take away nutrients from plants.
Stable compost can be added and blended and mixed into any of your outdoor planting projects. You can mix it with other soil amendments such as peat moss, shredded bark, loamy topsoil. There are many different mixing ratios that you can try.
Compost is nature's fertilizer, providing nutrients to plants and releasing them slowly over time.
Compost improves texture, reduces runoffs, and contains moisture. It makes plants just much healthier.
Thanks for watching our demonstration. I hope it was both informative and enjoyable.